برنارد خوري مهندس معماري لبناني يثير الجدل أينما حل، لأن أعماله ببساطة لا تشبه سواها. يخرج عن السائد ويقارب الهندسة المعمارية بوصفها تعبيراً سياسياً وثقافياً وإنسانياً. بهذه الروح بنى حضوراً لافتا في لبنان وخارجه، فأنجز مشاريع في أكثر من 17 بلداً، وأصبح أحد أبرز المهندسين المعماريين في المنطقة. من أشهر أعماله في بيروت مشروع B018 بتصميمه تحت الأرض وسقفه المتحرك، إضافة إلى مبان سكنية وتجارية وثقافية تحمل دائما بصمته الجريئة. كما قدم العمل التجهيزي فيتروفيوس إن كوارنتين الذي عرض في ميلانو، مبرزا قدرته على المزج بين الهندسة والفكرة والفن. ورغم حضوره الدولي، يختار خوري أن يعمل من بيروت لأنها تدفعه بتناقضاتها إلى الابتكار، ومكتبه في الكارنتينا التي توصف بأنها منطقة مثقلة بتاريخها وتهميشها، لكنها تبقى نقطة تقاطع أساسية في حكاية العاصمة. هناك يصوغ خوري مشاريع هندسة جريئة متفردة ومبنية على فكرة بسيطة: الإبداع ليس ابن المصادفة، بل ابن الخبرة والرؤية التي تتجاوز المتوقع. نتعرف عليه أكثر في هذا التقرير.
My name is Bernard Khoury. I'm an architect. I am based in Beirut. It's difficult to define myself in a couple of words, but if I'll have to do it, I'll say I'm an architect of the present, an architect of the situation. And I like to explore these situations and try to produce meaning out of these situations. I grew up in walls that were designed and built by my father, in furniture that was designed and built and produced by my father. In fact, I'm sitting on a chair designed and produced by my father over 60 years ago. I grew up with a perception of the profession that was very idealized through a little kid watching his father as a hero. Obviously, things maybe didn't turn out to be exactly the same for me. Times have changed, but and I think the profession has drastically changed since. I don't think it's much about freedom as much as it is about a non-interesting situation will never produce interesting architecture. I'm not a fetishist of architecture. I don't look at architecture as, you know, from a purely aesthetic angle, to put it in simple terms. I like buildings that produce meaning, that provoke situations that hopefully are relevant. I want to believe that architecture is a political act, can still be a political act. Unfortunately, it's becoming less and less these days, where the architect sat next to the king. Today, architecture has become a minor art in my opinion. But I'm still hanging on. I still want to believe that architecture can still produce relevant meaning, political meaning, social meaning, cultural meaning. It was a very serious and tough decision I took to come back in the early 90s, in the so-called post-war era, to come back to Beirut. It was a tough and difficult decision. I do not regret it. Beirut and this territory as a whole has taken me to places and to situations I would have never experienced in a more stable environment. It drains you very much. It's not comfortable at all, but it's incredibly interesting. It keeps you awake. So if you still believe that your practice can bring something to your environment, to this fabric you're part of, you have to stay alert. I have to deal with commissions that come only from the private sector, and that comes with the very sour realities of capital, profit and gain. So I'm not serving political agendas that come with a certain level of morale to begin with. I'm serving capital. That's extremely difficult to produce relevant political meaning in such conditions. Obviously, there's the first love, you know, there's the first one that ever makes it to reality, the first one that materializes. And that first project I'm talking about, the B018, is to this date my most published project. Strangely, it's the first thing I ever did. Today, more than 90% of my volume is not in Lebanon. I have worked in 17 different countries, and mostly, a lot of it is institutional, outside of Lebanon. In Lebanon, no institutional work, purely the private sector. At the time when I was very young, but Beirut was known to be, all these sugar-coated definitions of Beirut, the Switzerland of the Middle East. The quarantine was completely sealed. The misery was hidden behind the wall until the dramatic events of February 1976, when the quarantine was burned down to the ground. What's in the quarantine? The slaughterhouses, the tanneries, the garbage processing company, army barracks. It stinks here. They've demolished the wall, they burned the camps, but the scar of what's happened is still visible, strangely. So the quarantine is a problematic urban fabric. And let's say that I find my place in my playground in these types of environments.